안녕하세요, 안타키입니다. Glad you could join us on this edition of Let's Speak Korean. 지승현 선생님, 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요. 안녕하세요, 지승현입니다. We have another great lesson this time, so please join us. 만나서 반갑습니다.
Now, in our last lesson, we learned how to ask and answer questions politely when we are in a formal setting or when we are talking with people that we're not too familiar with. Let's get a quick review now. Now, how would we ask someone on the street where the post office is, for example?
우체국이 어디에 있습니까?
Now, what if the answer is that the post office is behind the bank?
은행 건물 뒤에 있습니다.
Now, this is what we learned in our last lesson. Well, this time we're going to venture a little further and learn how to answer some more questions when we are in a formal setting or when we're talking with people that we're not too familiar with. Now, we're going to be concentrating on things that have happened in the past. Well, then, let's take a look at the clip.
여보세요? 네, 이영기 씨요. 잠깐만 기다리세요. 이영기 씨 출근했습니까?
네, 출근했습니다.
어디에 갔습니까?
회의하러 갔습니다.
여보세요? 이영기 씨가 지금 자리에 없습니다. 회의하러 갔습니다. 나중에 다시 전화해 주세요. 네. 네. 이영기 씨, 조금 전에 친구가 전화를 걸었습니다.
All right, we just saw Michael in his office answering the phone. Now, the caller asked for Michael's colleague by the name of Lee Young-gi. Michael asked another colleague where he is, and he gets the answer that Lee Young-gi is in a meeting, right? So, Michael takes a message, and when Lee Young-gi shows up a while later, he gives him the memo. Well then, let's get a check of the expressions in this lesson. We're going to learn how to talk about things that happened in the past in a formal setting or with people we're not familiar with by ending our sentences with either 없습니다 or 없습니까. Now let's begin by going over some vocabulary. Please repeat after 선생님.
전화를 받다. 전화를 받다. 전화를 걸다. 전화를 걸다. 출근하다. 출근하다. 회의하다. 회의하다.
이영기 씨 출근했습니까?
네, 출근했습니다.
이영기 씨 출근했습니까?
네, 출근했습니다.
어디에 갔습니까?
회의하러 갔습니다.
어디에 갔습니까?
회의하러 갔습니다.
Michael asked his colleague whether Lee Young-gi has come to work. Now, how would we say this in Korean?
이영기 씨 출근했습니까? 이영기 씨 출근했습니까?
Yes, he has come to work. Let's try this in Korean now.
네, 출근했습니다. 네, 출근했습니다.
출근 means to come to work. Now, Lee Young-gi is not at his desk at the moment, and Michael's colleague tells him that he is at a meeting, that he has gone to a meeting. Now, how would we say this in Korean?
회의하러 갔습니다. 회의하러 갔습니다.
Now, instead of just saying 출근했어요 and 갔어요, they say 출근했습니다 and 갔습니다. right? Okay, remember we learned in our last lesson that these are the polite expressions, right? The only difference from last week is that all of these verbs are in their past tense, right? Okay, from 씁니다 and 씁니까, we have come to 없습니다 and 없습니까? Right. 선생님, so when it comes to the past tense, we end the sentences with 없습니다 and 없습니까, right?
That's right. When you want to turn either verb or adjectives into the past tense, all you have to do is use either 없습니다 or 없습니까 to finish the sentence. When the stem of verbs and adjectives end in either 아 or 오, we add 않습니다. And for the rest of the vowels, we add 없습니다. For verbs that end in 하다, we add 였습니다 to turn it into 하였습니다. But this we often shorten to read 했습니다.
Now let's practice some examples by incorporating some of the new vocabulary that we learned in our lesson earlier.
전화를 받다. 전화를 받았습니다. 전화를 걸다. 전화를 걸었습니다. 출근하다. 출근했습니다. 회의하다. 회의했습니다.
That was very good. Now, let's practice asking some questions, shall we? Now, just as we did in our last lesson, we are going to add the word 가 to come up with some questions. All right, then, how would we ask someone what they did in Korean?
뭐 했습니까? 뭐 했습니까?
Please join 선생님 and I as we practice a little conversation. Okay? 뭐 했습니까?
전화를 받았습니다.
전화를 걸었습니까?
네, 전화를 걸었습니다.
출근했습니까?
네, 출근했습니다. 뭐 했습니까?
회의했습니다. Time for some extra expressions now. Now, Michael tells the caller that Lee Young-gi 씨 is not at his desk. Now, how did he say this in Korean?
지금 자리에 없습니다.
지금 means now, and 자리 is referring to the place where the person sits. That is the person's desk. So Michael's answer is that the person is currently not at his desk. Not here, that is. Right, this is an expression that we use very often, so you might want to remember this one. All right then, why don't you try saying it for yourself?
지금 자리에 없습니다. 지금 자리에 없습니다.
There is another expression that we should learn. Now, Michael tells the caller to try calling again later. Now, what was the expression in Korean?
나중에 다시 전화해 주세요.
나중에 means later. Don't forget it. Now, let's get a wrap up of what we have learned so far in this lesson. We are going to go over the expressions one by one, along with the clip.